Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of CCC Talks. My name is Mark O'Loughlin, the Managing Director of the CCC, and today we are joined by the renowned Simone Jo Moore. Now, Simone, you and I have met numerous times over numerous years, numerous conferences and events. I love some of the stuff that you're talking about. We're going to look at a few of those areas today. But before we do that, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing recently?
Well, let's save all the official stuff. Just looked at my LinkedIn profile. I mean, really, that's the basics and the easiest thing to do, rather than run through the list of where I've worked and all that kind of stuff, and all the various skills and expertise are there. So what I kind of like to tell people then is that get to know someone on the human side, I guess. I'm not really particularly clever, nor especially gifted. I'm just extremely curious about our world. One of the things I really enjoy doing is probing the hearts and minds of what really makes business and IT tick. And I love all the conversations that lead to that whole evolution or revolution to really jumpstart people's thinking and their behavior and actions. I work on 4 key business principles. And I find that regardless of which organization or what I'm actually doing, that over the years, they've stood me in really good stead. And the first one is people connected. That's a principle that regardless of whether it's face-to-face using technology, the way in which we go about connecting people and not just the how, but who we also connect is also important. And based on that principle, we can walk into the next one, which is sharing knowledge. Having knowledge shared is the only way we then are able to work into the next principle of discovering possibilities and all the different ways in how we analyze and discover and report that back, and feed that back into the loop. And then based on that, we can realize our potential. So they're my 4 key things: people connected, knowledge shared, possibilities discovered, and potential realized.
Fantastic. And I think the changing world today there's a key focus on those areas, or there should be at least. I think, as you said, evolution or revolution. One person's revolution is somebody else's evolution there as well. So it depends where you're coming from. But I think, as you said yourself, curiosity, I think, is a key trait that we need. It's something that I don't know if you can teach it so much or if people have it inbuilt, but certainly in today's ever-changing landscape, curiosity is one of these skills that we certainly need and need a lot more of to examine and probe. We'll probably look at a little bit of curiosity throughout this session today. So what's going on? I know you've been traveling a lot as well this year, a lot of conferences. We'll probably pull in some of those findings that from your session. Now, today, what I want to talk to you about, because there is an overlap in all of that skill set and the people side of digital. We've spoke a lot about the people aspect. I think technology speaks for itself. It's good. It's there. It works. It can be difficult to make different technologies work together, but it's not overly complex at the end of the day. And one of the things we found, we did our digital skills survey, 29 CCC skills survey, and we found that, now, it wasn't a surprise, but we had to go ask the question, that the sequence for digital success is, guess what, people first, technology second. I mean, we had to go. And I mean, but when you look back over the evolution of IT, I think it's been put the technology in and it will solve problems. It may have been solved like that, or people, it's the easier thing to do, But yeah, big surprise. So people first, technology second. Now, in your experience, your travels with the organizations you speak to, with the people you speak at these events right here, are you seeing that people and organizations are understanding that today, or are they still trying to lead with technology? We get bombarded with AI, IoT, cloud, and all these solutions. Are they going solution first and then they realize, well, we haven't equipped people, A, to be curious about this stuff, to do the right thing with it? Or are they looking at the people side? What do you see?
Well, I think it depends on the maturity of the organization, first and foremost, because there are some organizations that have grabbed onto this technology and really run with it. And that, to me, is also based on their culture, based on how they're structured, and of course the people that they have, the skill sets and the capability. So those are the first things that I look at. And one of the key things that people are starting to grab a hold onto is realizing that the fail fast is something we've talked about before in, whether it's DevOps and agile thinking, etc. But in doing that, I think they're starting to discover that the human side is the gap. This
Yes,
is where
yes,
things will fall over. And from there's something from the Institute of Digital Transformation, they call it their readiness framework. And I
okay,
understand the CCC has some similar stuff around,
yeah, yeah,
discovering how people are ready for doing these
yeah,
transformations. And I think the key points for me that come out from that are really that technology is just the catalyst. That's all
yeah,
it is. The
yeah,
catalyst. So I look at movies like Mission to Mars, which is one of my favorite movies, and I
hmm,
look at some of the technology that they're using in this movie,
yeah,
and I love it. I look at it and I think
yeah.
this is great. But there's one part of the script that says, "Has that been tested?" And the guy said, "No, way too expensive to do that." And of course, then you see her roll her eyes, going,
Yeah,
"Great. They're
yeah,
about to take off to Mars. They might never come back alive. Has it been tested? No."
yeah, yeah.
So for me, no matter how far the technology advances, we're still having some of the same conversations.
We're still
And
having those. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, however, we are seeing some progress. So I think
Good.
in the last 12 months in particular, organizations are starting to understand that their structures can no longer stay the same. The way whether they flatten or move into autonomous teams or
Yeah,
those sorts of things. The traditional approaches through organizational change,
yes,
some of them are still solid, some of them still are good, but we're needing new ways of approaching it, new ways of thinking.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, what I see as well with flattening organizations, so I've no problem with organizations flattening. What I see challenges appearing though is they flatten too much,
Mm-hmm.
so then decision making doesn't happen. Or by flattening the organization, taking out the layers and layers of what we call the middle management per se, because they're not useful anymore, let's say. I'm not saying that's the case, but that's a perception perhaps, that the people with the experience built up over years are then exiting an organization. So those people that have seen, 30, 20, 10 years ago, let's do technology first and it doesn't yield the results that we want, are probably the people that can champion the behavioral change that we want today. But we're flattening the organization because that's what the mantra is. But we're flattening it, I think, for the wrong reason, probably from a cost perspective and to think we get more agile. But in some
I
organizations
think
I've
what they've
seen,
lost Yeah, I think what they've done is they've lost the focus around the capability required
I love
in
that.
order to support the new structure.
That's
And
fantastic. Yeah.
that's what they're missing is they've forgotten that those people that are there need to be taught how to be made the decisions. So it comes back to, again, how curious our problem solving skill sets, our decision making skill sets, but
Yes.
not just the skills in order how to do those things, but giving them permission to do it as well. Because in flattening the structure, you're now giving decision making more to the front line, which is where it needs to be. It needs to be where
Yes.
things
Yes.
are happening.
Yes.
But
Yes.
in order to do that, we have to give them the guidelines around, one of my favorites in the world, and one of my favorite mentors, Ivor McFarlane, as he
Yeah.
says, if we want innovation starts with disobedience. We have to help our people. Not everything fits. There's no perfect process, no perfect technology. We have to give them permission to be disobedient to the rules as and
Yes.
when it's appropriate. But we have to teach them that that's okay. We have to give them the psychological safe space to be able to do
Yes.
that as well.
Yes.
And we have to give them the skill sets to do that.
Love that. I've seen Ivor's session on that intelligent disobedience, I think it is, and he uses
Mm-hmm.
the analogy of the guide dog for the blind person that knows when to disobey the rule because
Hold them
of
back.
If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's fantastic.
It is.
Really, really good. And I think that that's another part of is it's not just about bringing in technology as we flatten the organization. It's about developing the people and, as you said, the new structures we're putting in place. So I think we've never done this before in industry where we're adopting such new technology in such short time frames. It changes very quick now, while we're reorganizing the organization significantly. And
Mm,
we're, moving away from the scientific management. The MBAs are crammed full of this stuff as to how you structure an org, into a new kind of structure that's still being understood. I think, as you said,
mm.
that's good. So intelligent disobedience is good. Now that leads me, I think, that's a good segue into something you've been talking about. I've seen you present it. I love it. You've been talking about it all year. Emotional intelligence. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about what, in your view, emotional intelligence is, why it's important, and what it can do for organizations and people during this time of let's say, digital change, all change.
Well, it's interesting. There are two facets to what I've been covering in the EI or emotional intelligence side of things. So
Yeah.
you just use EI for short.
Yeah.
Um, the first one is definitely the human side,
Yes.
which um, I will get to as well. There's also the technology side.
Of
So
course.
if I think about, I'm starting to talk a lot more around the EI of AI because people are focused on the technology side of things. I
Yes.
refer to it as machine humanity.
I love
And
that. Machine humanity. Fantastic. We
yeah,
forget that,
yeah.
don't we? Yeah.
hmm It is. And it's really about those three interactions of people to technology, people to
Yeah.
process, and people to people. And I have a quote that I've been using a lot, and I really enjoy this. It's by Kirk Bourne, and he's a principal data scientist and executive advisor at Booz Allen Hamilton.
Mm.
And he describes artificial intelligence not as artificial. I mean, living in France, we don't like fake things.
Ah,
So instead of
of course.
artificial, he's changed the A, and I think it's so smart. Actionable intelligence, augmented or accelerated or even assisted. So
S-
think about if you think about what we want AI
Yes.
to do for us, it's
Yes.
exactly that. It's how we're going to augment or accelerate our human intelligence. So that's a much nicer way than saying artificial. If we can look at it, how we are as humans are interacting with the technology, and what is it that we're hoping to have at the end of that interaction.
Yeah.
Uh,
To me, I think this is really good stuff. I'm going to come back on that in a moment because we at CCC we look at AI as well. We've developed some courses on that. But a big thing for me in developing that was, to really define what artificial intelligence is today, because it's not
mm,
like the stuff of the science fiction movies of
no.
tomorrow. So I think that's important to define what it is. And to me, somebody said, could you describe that to somebody who doesn't know what it is? I'd say it's automation using the latest technologies, which are more agile. So something like that. But I want to go back. Tell me again, the instead of using artificial, what were those words that you're now using that you've heard? I want to hear them again. I thought they were really good.
Okay, so when
So
you think of AI, think of it
yeah,
this way: intelligence is always there, okay,
yes, yes.
but think of it as actionable
Actionable, fantastic. Yeah.
or augmented
Yes, yes,
or accelerated
yes,
or even assisted. Now, think
yes,
about it. That's exactly what we want it to do. Take action.
yes,
Augmenting is just making something, making it better, bigger and better.
yes, yes,
Accelerated, we want the speed today. That's one of the reasons we have such agile focus is we wanting
yeah,
things to be even faster. And
yes.
assisted, it's there to help us.
Fantastic. There's some learnings there. I think that's a real. I'm taking that away as to how do you explain AI. So that goes beyond my automation. I'm going to use those for.
Mm,
They're really, really good. But isn't there a case that the way I see some organizations, what they're doing with the latest in AI, the technology is great, it does certain things, is they seem to want to rely more on the AI to do more work and strip away the human element, basically downsize, outsource, whatever that is. So you end up with technology that then works to whatever parameters you code into it with a little bit of thinking around the sides, but not huge thinking. That are we taking
Yeah.
the human element away from businesses by putting in all this super tech?
Well, this is where when we think about the EI of AI, so and that's why I said I want to get to the human training we need to do in AI first. But AI has to have EI built in. Otherwise, we're actually going to lose the ability. Otherwise, it's just exactly that. It's automation. And machine learning is brilliant, but it's
Yes,
not AI. So
yes,
to take it to the next level, there are companies doing some pretty amazing things. So you can look at the organizations that are doing facial recognition. And
yes.
what they're doing in terms of facial recognition is not just about security. They're merging emotional quotient into the technology, enabling machines to sense and adapt to human emotion.
Hmm.
And with the analytics that they gain, so one organization in particular has got over 3.5 billion faces captured. There's
Yes.
6.7 million faces or something like that, over
Wow.
87 countries, genders, and everything. Now, what they can do is then combine that knowledge into, say, driverless cars, which is being experimented with now.
Hmm.
And if, say, the machine actually recognizes the micro expressions and someone's starting to fall asleep, they can, flash the lights, put alarms
Yes, yes,
on, and the
yes.
person is like, oh, okay. But even organizations in HR are now using facial recognition for candidacy interviews so
Yeah.
that they can actually assess someone's micro expressions and things like that to get a better, more unbiased understanding
Yeah.
of who this person actually is that
And
they're hiring.
yeah, I think that's okay as long as that's what the company wants to do. That's the type of
Hmm.
process they want to do. But I would also suggest that I'm sure it's in that organization that it's not the only parameter, that there is a person as part
No,
of the hiring process that can then
exactly,
understand the person
exactly.
as well. But it
But this is
helps you
what
in
I mean.
understanding.
Yeah, this is what I mean by augmenting our skills. So we still
Yes,
have
yes,
the
yes,
HR hiring process,
yes.
but there's no reason why we cannot use AI to help us do these things. And we work with them, if you like, they become our tech buddy. They're a
Technically,
colleague.
yeah. Mm, I do, and I think there is a gap that I personally see in organizations I'm speaking to as well, where that also means you bring in the technology, put it in
Hmm.
place, but then upskill the staff that you have to use
Yes,
the AI buddy or whatever that is to again do a deeper job or a more intuitive job,
more effective.
a more
Yeah.
effective job as well. Yeah, that it's not a case of bring in technology and we see a huge displacement of people.
Mm.
I think there's a case, in some cases that will happen. That's okay. That's a business model. But in other cases, it's look at your people and look at how do we develop our people, which we've developed over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We
Yes.
know them, they're good, and they can acquire us. How do we develop them into the new type of worker that we want to capitalize on this technology? I think that's going to be a winning formula for the disruptors of today and tomorrow, is how they recognize, how they upskill their people to use the latest in technology to actually do something better than their competitors who are using technology to save costs.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because this is where the World Economic Forum put out, the Future of Jobs report earlier this year. And one of the key things out of that were the top skills
Yes,
that
yes,
they
yes.
saw, and this is from a global perspective, required.
Mhm.
One of the top 10 is emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And well, should it actually get some airing now on a bigger scale? And, never in the history of calm down has anyone calmed down by being told to calm down. So
That's
that's
very
not the
true.
reality of our experience.
Uh,
So what we're actually, I know, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
That's very true.
You know, the reality is this: you can be sitting at your desk, and whatever you do throughout the day, you will experience energy shifts. So you'll be in a high energy mode in the morning, perhaps,
Hmm.
or it starts to then lower again until you get that morning coffee, and then it will peak up again. And as we go through the day, our energy levels shift.
Hmm.
So we kind of call that wear and tear. You know, it's sort of wearing into we're in the zone for a while, but you can keep operating at a certain level. But if you don't go into what we call rest and repair mode, you're going to crash and burn.
Yep.
And so this is why we look at, you know, the reality of emotion, if you like, or, you know, the emotion of motion, is
Yes.
that
Yes.
as we're going through the highs and lows, that's fine. But we also shift positive and negative. And it can be something mild, like we're just irritated, right up to rage. And people's vocabulary is very limited in emotional intelligence. I find like they're in, the more that they can describe and use vocabulary to get to the heart of exactly what level they're at, makes
Yes.
it easier for them to understand and then manage that particular emotion.
Yes.
And it is learnable. This is not something that is just based on who you are right now.
Yes.
If you look at the fundamental of EI competencies, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, we have to create a safe environment for our people that is more than physical. There's a real untapped potential in our talent pool when we allow them the space to have the courage and freedom for their talent to emerge and
Mm.
influence and expand that.
Yeah.
And it's no longer walk in the door and your emotions are cut off when you walk in the door. You know, it used to be, oh no, keep it all hidden and,
Yes.
and
Yes.
inside.
Yes.
It's not professional to show your emotion. But
Oh,
in
yeah.
doing that, you actually deny the whole human being. You deny, people will stop engaging. I've done it myself. You know, in the old days, it's like, no, a manager can't have feelings. You know, got to be ultra professional. I mean,
I
get
know. I think
real.
we're.
This is not
No, I
the
think we're.
reality of our world.
Yeah, and that shows the
So,
change in, I said, management styles required for today. It's a different thing. We're using, it's not machines we're managing and time and motion and all this kind of stuff and widgets
mm,
through process. It's knowledge working, it's thinking. We need a lot of creativity right now, and you don't get that by shutting people down, by putting in
no,
these large hierarchies, by what do they call it, a fire blanket to innovation.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
we,
It just dampens everything. I mean,
yeah,
you see it when you walk into an organization and they have these wonderful banners and things, and they say, "Oh, we, you know, passionate people, creative people, innovative people," and, and all of this takes emotional intelligence. It
it
underpins the whole
does.
thing. Business relationship management, relationship agility. You look at all the words that they're using.
Hmm.
Um, you know, just last week, they announced that Alexa now has emotions. And it's, but here's this, because I love Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Yeah,
Galaxy. You know,
yeah,
this is not going
yes,
to end.
yes.
This is all going to end in tears. You know, it's even worse than I thought it would be.
It might,
But the
yeah.
thing is
Mm,
Alexa's emotions at the moment. The developers are the ones that are inputting this. There's three levels of intensity, and it's either happy and excited or disappointed and empathetic. Now we know that saying, you know, your favorite football team just lost. Oh, I'm really sorry. You know, there's a certain level of tone that can ping into sarcasm if we're not careful. And
that,
if developers are
yes,
programming emotions into our chatbots and everything else,
yes.
they need this training.
Yeah, and
How
this is
else are
where I
you
was
going to
thinking,
program emotions if you don't know them or understand them?
or can you put in the widest range? And like that sarcasm is, how do you detect the sarcasm? There's a lot there. So that's why I think AI is in a certain place, but it's going to be 20, 30, 40 years to be in, I think, that level. But we have a journey along the way. That's why those 4 A's that you've come up with there that you mentioned are so important, I think, to understand what it is today. And I think the emotional intelligence part is incumbent on ourselves and using these tools, and for organizations to recognize how they support that to get the best from these
Mm,
tools. Because if you're coding in intelligence, that's not intelligence, or responses or emotion, that's not emotion. So we've a long way
Well,
to go.
one of our favourites that we've seen at conferences, both you and I, Dave Snowden, and one of the
Yeah.
things he talked
Yes.
about in terms of our values, and our emotions are driven by a lot of that, the quality of the experiences we have. I mean,
Yes.
values, they don't reach an end point, and our experience continues to fluctuate and change all the time.
Absolutely.
So when he was saying that, true values are not taught and declared, um, they evolve through our acts
Yes.
and our interaction of the living. And so they're very, these are things that are visceral. These are things
Yes.
that live
Yeah.
inside us, and our values are our compass.
Absolutely. And you can, if you map the history of evolution, I said it's evolution, not revolution here. If you map the history, you'll see different behaviors over different histories based on what was
Mm,
happening and how we learn and
yeah,
evolve. I have a quote here. I'm going to read it so I get it right. Okay. I think it's very good from yourself. This emotional intelligence is a needed skill set because the human side of things is getting lost. AI, and I like this, AI and robots don't have an emotional connection with the customer. I think that's very important, and I think that's missed at the moment. That the AI and the robots today do not have that emotional connection with the customer. It's the people, it's the workers, and to me, there's significant value in organizations understanding that and developing their people to have that emotional connection with your customers. Because if you
yeah.
don't, what you have is a commodity product or service of no differentiation. And I think that's what we're missing with this technology, is trying to do quicker, faster, better, but missing the
Mm,
emotional connection. I think customers are missing that too, with if they
mm.
don't see any emotional connection from your product or your service, they just see it as a commodity, probably want it for free, probably don't see any differentiation, they're not loyal, easy to switch.
Well, I think we have to think about it like the Alexa example, that we just talked about it. It's like,
Yes.
what could possibly go wrong? Ooh, anyway, I'll let that one go for a moment. But I think it's interesting we're taking the step. But there's
Yeah.
another organisation I've been looking at some of their research, and basically what they're doing is working on intelligent emotion AI for voice. So they've been specifically working with PTSD,
Hmm.
so a lot of war veterans, and analysing the rhythm and tone of their voices and
Yes.
looking at, their stress levels, and being able to diagnose at what level, PTSD, and also, so
Yes.
let's face it, traumatic events, they change our circuitry in our brain,
Yes.
and therefore our emotions and our muscle tone, which affects our speech. So they've gone to that level, and our voices are unique prints, just like our fingerprints. That's why we
Yes.
use it in security sometimes. But
Sometimes.
they've been able to achieve an 89% accuracy in distinguishing those that have PTSD and those that don't. So I think that's really interesting, because we're kind of bridging the communication gap between humans and machines now by introducing
Yes.
this style of AI. And
Yes.
imagine you're a service desk agent and you've got a customer on the phone that's it started off okay, but now they're getting a bit frustrated, or
Yeah.
whatever the
Hmm.
case might be.
Yes.
Your chatbot buddy, your chatbot colleague, your AI colleague, if you like, because they're using this technology, are able to sense these voice changes before you may be able to,
Hmm.
and ping you, I don't know, some kind of message or emoticon to let you know, and maybe in a little, graph as it's
Yes.
moving along,
Yes.
so that you are able to adjust your tone and
Yes.
rate of speech
Yes.
just, to the appropriate, to help that customer along. It enhances, this is the augmentation thing, enhances that interaction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think on two
an
levels
idea.
that's fantastic. One is you're helping a society of people that have a challenge like post-traumatic
Mm,
stress disorder and how to deal with that. So that's one part of it. But then cleverly bringing that into service desk, because people do get agitated. They've been waiting for a long
mm,
time. They have a problem. They're not ringing because they're happy. They're ringing because something probably gone wrong. And if you can bring them along that journey, get them down and get things solved, because a lot of times in service desks or these contact centers, we're trying to fix the problem. We're focused on finding an answer rather than the individual. And so we might
Yeah.
not be as responsive to them to kind of calm them down and get them through that process. Again, as you said, that emotional connection with the customer. And I think there's a huge value in our customers that ring our desk, are obviously calling, a lot of them call with challenges and problems, but when
Mm.
they leave, they're happy. I mean, people will buy services just to be happy if something went wrong and it got fixed, and they were happy when it got fixed. So there's a huge
Look,
thing there.
technology is technology. Things
Yeah,
break as much as we
yeah,
don't want them to, it
yeah,
does.
they do.
But the
Yeah,
journey that we take someone through
yeah,
to solve that issue,
that's it.
the way we make someone feel, that's still so core to our human way of
Yeah,
being that
yeah.
that's not going to change. I don't think it ever has.
I don't think it has. I think maybe it gets lost a little bit in the let's adopt technology and it can lower costs kind of conversation. We might come back to that another day. I think there's a day session in that. Simone, we're almost up on time, but there is something I want to ask you to just mention. You can elaborate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You have aliases. So you're also known as, you know where I'm going with this, the service management mixologist and
Yes.
a human API. Uh, Before we finish, I know what those mean. Do you want to expand on what the mixologist is and what it does, and what the API is and what it does? Be interested in that.
The human appy actually is really easy to explain. The majority of people that will probably hear this know what an appy is. In fact, we're always doing that, trying
Yes,
to get two different things to talk all the time.
yes.
So basically, I'm not exactly a robot, but yeah, I am programmed to help connect.
I'm gonna say it. We never said you're a robot, but seriously, I think that's a fantastic name or moniker you've come up with, human API, because it's that human
I'm a
element. We
human
all know about
API.
the technology APIs and connect all clouds and digital, all that kind of stuff. I think we need more human APIs. I think you're certainly a model for that. And just briefly,
Thank you. And that
explain
leads
to our
into the mixology,
the
actually.
mixologist. Yeah, exactly. I love this one. Mm.
Because if you're going to be a human appy, you also have to. That means have to connect all these different things. Part of it, and I have as a standard. And if anyone knows mixology from hospitality industry, it's more than just someone that works in the bar and might make a cocktail. A mixologist actually understands and knows about all the different ingredients and how to actually blend different flavors
Yes.
and understand, I guess, the chemical composition that will shift and change how something tastes. And because I travel a lot, usually the first thing get off the plane, where's the bar?
I think that's where it probably came up with that.
Yeah, I think it must have been the Irish blood in me. Anyway, so my standard drink is a margarita because every good bar person, there are certain standard drinks. And a margarita is so simple, it really is, and it has
Yes,
very few ingredients. But if you get the balance wrong,
yes,
um,
yes.
you really know about it,
So,
or it's just a little off. And it can come
yes,
down to even the type of salt used or whatever. But
yes,
that is, if you think about it, think about all the different frameworks and practices we have out there,
yes,
whether it's Prince, workforce planning, ITIL, Obashi, DevOps, IT service management, human resource management,
yes,
Kaizen, value stream mapping, HDI, Verism,
yep,
OCM. Um, you've got practices, they are not just IT based. Look at all the business practices from finance, from HR, from sales and marketing.
yes,
Um, when you look at an organization, we want to be able to blend these practices because there's no one that rules them all. And we need to maintain management commitment. You need sponsorship and reinforcement. It needs cultural change, structural change, tooling, automation, and trust and collaboration. Now, every single one of those frameworks and practices, etc., they all take emotional intelligence and relationship agility to work. And you need that connectivity and understanding of how those ingredients can be blended into the unique cocktail for that organization.
I love that. Yeah, I've looked at that for years. I think it's about getting not only the ingredients, but you said it, the right ingredients and the quality ingredients. And for us, it's
Yes.
people, framework, standards, all these kind of things,
Mm,
and the tools and technologies, putting them all and blending them into the right mix for that
mm,
organization. I think
exactly.
if you expand the mixologist is around the world, people's flavor are a little bit different. So
Mm,
something that's mixed in one country might be blended slightly different for another palate. And I think that's important, as you said, that we do take this kind of mindset. That's why I wanted to ask you about the
yeah,
concept
it's
of
definitely a
mixology
mindset.
and how important it is. So not only do we need more human APIs, which you're a fantastic model for, we need more mixologists in our
Yes,
organizations, which
we
are also a
do.
fantastic example for. Okay. Simone, listen, fantastic. It's great to have you here. We're up on time. So listen, I want to thank you again for joining us today. I think we've got some really good insights. On all these talks, I take away things. I've certainly a lot to take away here, especially the 4 A's. I'm going to go back later on and re-listen in, write it down. I'm going to remember them because it's better than just saying AI is about automation. Whoa, no, Simone says AI is about these areas here.
Well,
And
remember, the quote did come from Kirk Bourne. I've just adopted it.
fantastic. Fantastic. We'll reference that as well. And I do think that emotional intelligence and emotional connection thing is a huge part of this change and the story and all things digital that's going on. Simone John Moore, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. It's been great fun.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
So, just as we were wrapping up that CCC talks with Simone, she mentioned that there were a few other points, a few key takeaways she wanted to give us. So we started recording again to capture those. So, Simone, if you could just share with us those final thoughts, that'd be fantastic.
Oh, it's just a couple of things that I love to finish a lot of my sessions off
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Because it's really important to understand that emotional intelligence is not the opposite of intelligence.
yes,
It's not the triumph of heart overhead. It is that intersection of both
yes.
where they intersect. But I think a key thing, just wrapping up and thinking about the stuff that we covered, is that the collaboration we have creates conversations,
Mhm.
and those conversations create better communication, and that in turn creates wider transparency and therefore deeper trust.
Fantastic, and that's I think that's a good formula as well. So I think there's been a lot of takeaways from today's session, and for those who watched the second bit here, the last bit, I think there's some extra, an Easter egg, let's call it, a little Easter egg for our listeners who stayed on. So thanks again, Simone. We appreciate that, and we'll talk again.
Okay, bye.
Bye.